You're tuned in to Oilers Nation every day with Tyler Yaremchuk, live every weekday on the Nation Network YouTube.
Are the Oilers reverse retro jerseys cursed? I think the question needs to be asked at this point. Edmonton falls to the LA Kings. McDavid falls because of Alex Edler. Frank Seravalli is going to stop by as well to talk about some potential D targets for the Edmonton Oilers. It is a loaded up edition of Oilers Nation every day from the Sports Closet studio. So let's get things rolling with the lead. Dun dun. The Oilers fall 3-1 to Trevor Moore and the LA Kings. It was a hat trick for Trevor Moore as he put the third one into the empty net. One thing I noticed at the game last night is there was a Kings fan after that empty netter waving Oilers fans goodbye as they headed towards the exit. I think he may have forgot how Game 7 last year maybe played out. Anyways, Edmonton falls 3-1. There is a lot to get to with this hockey game. We're going to dig into the home defeat. We're going to frolic around with Frank Seravalli a little bit later on. But the big story on Twitter, everywhere, is the Alex Edler hit on Connor McDavid. Edler steps up in the neutral zone. You could argue about whether or not he moves his body position. He clips Connor McDavid. The Oilers captain goes down. Darnell Nurse says, I'm going to do something about it. He wants to drop the gloves with Edler. Edler doesn't really oblige. The linesmen jump in really quick. The result, Edler gets 2 for kneeing. He gets 2 for roughing. Darnell Nurse is given 4 minutes for roughing. Didn't make a ton of sense to me. But anyways, the Oilers don't get a power play on that play. Alex Edler, we find out today, is going to avoid supplemental discipline. I think we have a couple of clips ready to go of the hits, or we'll have them in just a second. But it's worth noting Alex Edler has done this in the past. If you watched the broadcast, you heard Zach Hyman come out and talk about how Edler did the exact same play to him. Got a 2-game suspension for it. Zach Hyman missed 2 months. That is pretty telling. And considering that hit happened not all that long ago, and I know the repeat offender thing doesn't actually play into NHL suspensions. It's about dollars lost and all of that kind of stuff. But Edler has a history of doing this. He's been suspended before for almost the identical hit. And yet the NHL looks at this one, a play on the league's best, most electric player, shrugs and goes, meh. Nothing too bad going on there. It's crazy. We're going to play them here in a little bit, but I want to get caught up on what you're all saying in the chat here because it is a busy YouTube chat. If you're watching on Facebook or if you're watching on the Oilers Nation Twitter as well, head over to the YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. That's where we read the chat. So if you want to have your take heard, you can drop it in there. Rusty, I knew this was going to be your take because you're a passionate Oilers fan. You said tough loss. Officiating was a clown show. How do you give Nurse a double minor for standing up for a teammate? The amount of hacking and holding that was allowed is atrocious. I thought, you got to give some credit to LA. They did a great job jamming up the middle of the ice. They got away with a lot, but they did play well. Rusty says Edler needs to be suspended for several games. He has a history of dirty hits in plays. So here's the slow motion look on this hit. You can see like McDavid is engaged with another player. He's got nowhere to go, so he tries to jump between the two. Edler ends up clipping him with the knee. I think it's hard to argue that Edler didn't know what he was doing. There's a reverse angle that I see Alex, our producer, is loading up. So we'll show that to you in a second. And Frank Seravalli, we're going to get his take on this a little bit later as well. The reverse angle kind of shows Edler does stay mainly in his lane, as you're going to see here. But I would argue right there, right at the last second, there's a slight movement towards the middle of the ice, in my opinion. And that's, for me, why I think this could have been suspendable. He wants to make contact with McDavid, and when you're going to make contact with a player, you need to do it in a legal way. Otherwise, don't make contact with a player. I thought the hit was maybe not all the way dirty. It's a split-second decision. I think Edler wants to make sure McDavid's not going past him. I don't think in the moment he's going, I'm just going to knee this guy and hurt him. I don't think so. But I also think you need to be responsible for what you do. And Edler is not being held responsible. Another element of this is that it was a nationally televised game in the U.S. And I said this yesterday, and Liam, we can bring you in on this as well. Skilled players get dragged down consistently in the NHL. that they seem fine with it. Gary Bettman, when he was asked last year if that's something that they want to change and if the league is an officiating problem, he said, no, absolutely not. So they don't seem to want to change it. They're okay with fifth, sixth defenseman having a little bit more leeway in order to even the playing field. And I don't get it, Liam.
I don't get it either. Like, I don't know why the NHL sees it this way. You have the best player in the world, one of the best players this league has ever seen, getting taken out on a dirty play, and that could have honestly been a lot worse than what it was. Thankfully, McDavid was able to continue to play, but you look back at other ones, like you said, Hyman was out for 2 months. We have a John Scott clip later on where he references another star player that was pretty much ended his career. And you know, you look at other leagues like the NBA, like they have this thing always like superstar calls, and people criticize it, but also there's a reason that league thrives with its stars, and the NHL just simply does not. And it starts with the league not wanting to protect its best players. Like it's quite frankly unbelievable that Edler got away with this for only what do you get, a 2-minute penalty? Like, it's ridiculous.
Alex, I want to play the John Scott clip. You give me a thumbs up when we have that available to run. Because John Scott on the Drop in the Gloves podcast, part of our network. And again, I totally understand if people are going to hear my take on it and be like, oh, Homer, like, you're in Edmonton, you watch every Oilers game, you work for Oilers Nation. Of course, you're going to have that take. John Scott's usually the exact opposite when it comes to the Oilers. He's usually the last one to give the team any credit. And as a former player, I thought his take on it this morning on his pod was interesting. Again, we'll bring that to you in just a second here. We'll get caught up on the chat. Oh, we're good? Okay, let's play it. Here's John Scott on Dropping the Gloves on the Hit.
As an NHL player, Alex Edler's been in the league for over 10 years. He knows how fast the game is. He knows when he puts himself in a bad situation. He has done this many times before. He should get 5 games for this. It's a dangerous hit. You could end someone's career. You could tear ACL, LCL, meniscus, everything, blow the whole knee out. Hyman, he put him out for 2 months. Could have been a lot worse. When you're going at somebody and you throw your knee to them, it's even just to extend your leg because you know you're going to get beat. It's bad. I know it happens fast, and I know people say it's a knee-jerk reaction and you can't control it. You can control it. You skate every single day, Alex Edler. You've been in the NHL for over 10 years. You know what you're doing. You've done that exact same play in the exact same position of the ice. It's a bad hit. It's a really bad hit. It could have potentially ruined the career of Connor McDavid. If he gets him the right way, his game is speed. If he hits him and he has to get a complete knee not replacement, just scope everything, LCL, MCL, everything, he's not the same player. Bobby Orr, I'm not comparing the two, but Bobby Orr had his career ended by a knee-to-knee. Wasn't the same player. So I don't know.
So
got me thinking.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think McDavid was going fast enough. And again, we've watched in slow motion so many times that maybe my perception of it is all wonky. But anyways, that was John Scott's take on the whole thing. Heading into the YouTube chat quickly here before we get to Frank Seravalli. Not exactly surprised to see how the Oilers Nation chat is taking the hit. But a lot of people saying, did the Oilers maybe miss a Zach Kassian kind of element last night? Darnell Nurse steps in and tries to go after him. But after that, Connor McDavid kind of took it into his own hands, I guess, with the cross-check that he was eventually called for and then resulted in the Kings scoring the game-winning goal. So maybe you could say, hey, going after Edler isn't the right move at all there. But a lot of you wondering, do the Oilers maybe, especially with Evander Kane out of the lineup, I think you could say, do they miss a little bit of that jam, a little bit of that, protect the star element in this lineup? Squishy says Kassian would have went in, win or lose. Rusty talks about, Kassian maybe. McKay says the double minor to Nurse was BS. I didn't love it, but again, if they would have dropped the gloves, I would imagine Nurse would have just gotten an instigator and the penalties would have washed out anyways. And maybe that's what the officials were thinking there to kind of look at the other side of that thing. But interesting to hear John Scott's take on it as well. There is a lot I want to get to today on the show. I want to break down the game last night a little bit more in depth. I really want to talk about Evan Bouchard because I looked into some of the numbers with Evan Bouchard. I want to talk about that Janmark Klim-Kostin duo as well. I want to get your take on seeing the reverse retros in person, but it's not Wednesday. It's Thursday. Frank Seravalli was traveling yesterday, but he carved out some time for us today. So let's get to frolicking with Frank Seravalli. I think we got a little smirk out of Frank. I was watching him in the bottom as we teed him up. Frolicking with Frank Seravalli, not bad.
I mean, I like it, but I mean, do you see like I'm not doing any frolicking anywhere, so I don't think it necessarily fits. Just like my shirt.
You were in and you heard what John Scott had to say about the Alex Edler hit on Connor McDavid. We now know Edler not getting any supplemental discipline. What do you make of this whole thing? And do you know why no supplemental discipline? Like, was there any sort of explanation from the league?
No, I didn't get an explanation. I just asked the simple question, is anything happening? And the answer was no. I had gave my take earlier today on Daily Faceoff Live. I think what clinched it for me is the angle that Edler goes into the play. And I don't know if Alex has that teed up from the earlier show or not, but when you look at it from that perspective, TNT had the shot, and here it is. Edler doesn't change his posture at all. He doesn't stick his leg out any further. I think it's a really unfortunate and accidental play. And I get all the things that you're saying and John Scott is saying, and I've seen the reactions, from Oilers Nation everywhere. And I get where the anger is, because it is Connor McDavid and because they think that Alex Edler has done this many times previously, not just Zach Hyman, but also going back to the World Championships. And he's done it before and he loses the benefit of the doubt. And I agree with that part of it, but I just don't see it on this particular hit. And I honestly just don't know that there was enough space. Usually what happens is you stick that leg out when you're in a spot where this guy is clearly going to blow by you. And I don't see it here. I think it's ugly. I think it's unfortunate, but I don't think that this is suspendable. And I don't even think he was necessarily trying to get him with the knee.
Yeah, and a lot of people are saying, it's the same hit as what he did on Hyman, and he got 2 games for it. The one difference I would point out, if I could make a defense for why this isn't suspendable, I agree with you. Like, he doesn't really jump over all that much, and I think it's too hard to really make a case for that. But the other Kings player is kind of forcing McDavid in, right? Like, if that other Kings player isn't there, McDavid's maybe able to actually fully jump around the check, versus on the Hyman one from a couple of years ago, there was no player there. Hyman was like full on leaping around him for the most part, and Edler still managed to get him with the knee. So
to your point, like if you watch it again from that back angle with the pressure that's coming from the other Kings player, even if Edler isn't in such a wide stance, the way McDavid is trying to squeeze his way through that gap, his knee is probably at risk anyway. That it was just that type of pressure and play that it's you don't ever want to see that.
I'm sure you can
look
imagine
how awkward
how
that is. Like, look at him stretching one leg around it. Like, you could go around and around in circles. I personally think the league is getting this right. And I mean, I'm not carrying anyone's water, coming in totally unbiased, looking at it from a 30,000 foot view and treating this same play as if any player in the league was doing it, not just Connor McDavid.
You can imagine how our chat's taking it, but we'll put this topic to rest. Lance, I'll give Lance the final word. Anyone does anything to McDavid, they're a bad man. Change my mind. Yeah, sure, Lance. That's the exact take I would expect our chat to have. You have a piece up on dailyfaceoff.com about some potential D-men that the Toronto Maple Leafs could target. You mentioned John Klingberg, Vlad Gavrikov, Matt Roy, who we saw last night for the LA Kings, Carson Soucy, and the duo of Nick Jensen, Dmitry Orlov in Washington. Where I want to go with this is, out of those names, are there any that maybe fit the bill for what the Oilers could be looking for later in the season?
Probably not particularly, and I think the Oilers are looking in a totally, honestly, on the long list of, that's unfair. It's not a long list. Of the list of Oilers priorities, I would think that adding a defenseman at this exact moment in time, while that may have previously been a mission or mandate for this team, that it's not. I think it starts down the middle, that I think they'd ideally like to add a really strong center. I think the second thing, when you're looking at the bottom 6, you mentioned Jam. Find someone tough to play against, whether it's old school brawn and toughness, and not necessarily like, in that style, but also someone that's totally relentless on pucks, that makes your team really difficult to play against. The Oilers in their bottom six have none of that. And if they're not scoring, what are you getting out of that group? That's the big question mark. That's what they've been focused in on. And I would say the longer the Jack Campbell thing goes on, and depending on how Stuart Skinner plays, you could probably even make an argument at a certain point, not that I think they're going to do anything related to it, but that goaltending might be ahead of the list than defenseman for the Oilers.
That'd be really interesting if we get to that point. Bottom sixers with Jam. I was really impressed with Klim Kostin last night. He laid a couple of big hits. He wasn't afraid to get engaged. We've dubbed him Klim Shady. That was Bag Milk's nickname for him. So we'll see if Klim Kostin can keep rolling for the Oilers. One other forward I wanted to get your insight on. Dylan Holloway played a team low 8 minutes and 6 seconds yesterday. He basically is a fourth line left winger for the team at the moment. I look at this, I go, first round pick. You want him to one day be a top 6 contributor for you. He's not right now. Is he not better off playing 20 plus minutes a night in Bakersfield? Have you heard anything about Holloway? Are they just sort of content with him being a fourth line winger for them?
No, I don't think they are. And I think they're looking for an opportunity to send him down. I think when you see a spot where my guess and read on the situation, and to be totally candid and transparent, I haven't asked this specific question. Okay. But if you see a spot when Tyler Benson gets healthy, that's when I would imagine that Dylan Holloway's on his way down.
Yeah, and we talked with Gregor earlier in the week, and he brought that up, and I'd been talking about that for a couple weeks too. Like, it would make sense. Benson, I think, impressed them in camp. He had a really good training camp and preseason. The injury, as it usually is with him, is just what's getting in the way. I want to talk about this because I loved it today on Daily Faceoff Live. You have an idea about changes to penalty shots. Take us through kind of like the whole story angle here with penalty shots and coaches maybe having a choice.
Okay, so this is totally my idea, not one endorsed by the NHL or their officiating department, but I wanted to throw it out there anyway, just for debate and discussion. One of the things that they talked about in the GM meeting on Tuesday in Toronto was the idea of penalty shots. And if there's a borderline play between penalty or penalty shot, which direction would the NHL's GMs rather see officials err on? Would they like to see more penalty shots or more penalties? And I said in response to that, just chit-chatting with a GM, and then I brought it to a few other people, I said, well, what happens if you just gave that option to the coach and said, hey, you skate over after a close call and you say, I'm thinking about either one. It's your call. The coach gets the opportunity to make the choice. If you're the Oilers and your power play clicks and you're on fire, and it also is probably dependent on situation in the game, you say, I'm going to take the power play. We get a lot of really good looks. We click at 30 or 33% or whatever the number is, and we're going to take that. But if your power play stinks, or depending again on the situation in the game, you say, I'm going to take the penalty shot. I tend to personally lean toward the idea of taking the penalty shot every time because you're getting a clean look. And Stephen Ellis made a great point on the pod or the show today too, saying, hey, you're also taking out the consequence or potential consequence of a shorthanded opportunity against. There's no guarantee on a power play you get a clean look. So I would take the penalty shot, and it also depends on who's shooting. Like if it's, I don't know, pick a guy from the Oilers, Derek Ryan, that was fouled, and you're like, hey, this guy needs to take the penalty shot. No, you're probably choosing power play. But my point is, let's increase the drama. Let's increase the ability to second guess and have fun with it the day after. And let's give the coaches the idea and an option to choose.
I love it. I think about like even the strategy of, let's say you're down 2 goals with 6 minutes to go, and one of these situation comes up. Okay, well, you take the penalty shot because let's get one without any more time going off the clock, and then it's a 1-goal game with 6 minutes left. I love the idea of Connor McDavid down by 1 in the third period, 3 minutes left. He gets fouled, and it's like, okay, let's give him the penalty shot. That's probably a pretty good chance of McDavid scoring. There's a ton, like, just adding more drama to the game, I think would be exciting. And for us too, yeah, can you imagine, like, late in the season, big game, the Avs have a chance to, like, give McKinnon the penalty shot. They go, no, power play, and they miss. That would dominate the headlines the next day. I think it'd be fantastic.
Yeah, but knowing the NHL, and I doubt they even listen to me or would entertain it, because of that exact second guess opportunity that they would probably lean against it.
Lame. That is lame. All right. Frank, appreciate the insight as always, man. This was really good, and we'll chat again next week.
I'm frolicking away.
All right. Let's frolic our way to today's wrap. Big thanks to Frank for joining us. If you want more Seravalli insights, Daily Faceoff live every single day on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. You can find Daily Faceoff on YouTube. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. 10 o'clock Mountain Time, 30-minute show, runs through a bunch of topics. It's a really, really good show. I'm there every day as well. Daily Faceoff on YouTube. Go give it a watch. Let's catch up on what the chat is talking about. A lot of you want to hit on Jesse Puljujärvi. And I saw the tweet that kind of went like Oilers Twitter viral yesterday about how, he's had this long extended look on the top line with McDavid. He's got 1 assist. My counter argument to complaining about Puljujärvi's production in that spot is who is producing right now for this team at 5-on-5, because the list is pretty slim. And maybe that's like a unfair chicken and the egg kind of discussion here. But since the start of the road trip, it's now been 5 games, if you count last night as well. The Oilers have scored 6 5-on-5 goals. They aren't getting a lot of production at 5-on-5. It's not like Nuge has 4 goals and Connor scored 3 times and Puljujärvi's just the dead weight. Or it's not like the second line is humming along at this unreal clip. Although Fogle had a nice goal against Florida, I know. But it's not like everyone else is humming and Puljujärvi's dead weight. No one's really moving that well at 5-on-5 right now. So I don't know if I really love the idea of calling up Puljujärvi. I actually thought last night was his best game on that line. So I don't know. He looked impactful to me. A lot of you talking about Klim Kostin, how good he looked. The numbers back it up. Again, yesterday, another example of me being wrong. Jay was pretty excited about the idea of Janmark and Kostin and seeing what they could do. I called them AHLers. They kind of showed last night that maybe they have a chance to be productive for this team. Again, digging into the on-ice numbers here, the 2 players, the best shots for percentages at 5-on-5 were Janmark and Kostin last night. When Janmark was on the ice, 11 5-on-5 minutes, that's a lot of hockey for him to play as well. Oilers outshot him 9-5. When Kostin was on the ice, Oilers outshot him 7-4. Those 2 actually made some good stuff happen when they were out there. So I think that third line maybe actually has some potential. And I love the jam that Kostin plays with as well. Like, he's a big body. Janmark moves well too, but Kostin's a big body. He has some decent hands. I don't know. We might have an interesting little bottom 6 player on our hands here. And I think, it's only been a month. You never know how these things go in the long run, but I think that was actually a pretty smart little move by Ken Holland, flipping Dmitry Samorukov, who, when you look at where he was on the depth chart, he was buried down there. You were never going to play him above Broberg or Niemelainen or Ryan Murray. So a smart little play by Holland to flip Samorukov for Klim Kostin. I like that duo. I think there's some potential. Okay, we need to have the Evan Bouchard conversation, because yesterday there were some concerning elements of his game. He struggled to get pucks through. In the first period alone, I think he had 4 shots get blocked. I'm pulling up the individuals from last night. So Corsi 4, individual Corsi 4 is how many times a player or a team directs a puck towards the net. It can get blocked, it can go wide, it can hit the post, it can go in and get stopped by the goalie. Any one of those 5 outcomes, if the player does it, it's a Corsi 4 event. Bouchard had 13 of those, so 13 attempted shots. He only ended the game with 3 shots on goal. So out of his 13 attempts, only 3 of them got through. Some of them missed the net. There was at least 2 I remember that missed the net. One of them was early on in the first period, and a bunch of them got blocked. And that's led to a whole thing on Twitter. Bouchard's this problem. Can't get pucks through. He's Shin Pad Assassin 2.0. One of the best nicknames Jason Gregor's ever come up with. It was for Andre Sekera, Shin Pad Assassin. And everyone's calling Bouchard Shin Pad Assassin 2.0. I don't get it. And people are jumping on this guy. And he's 22 years old. We've done this how many times over, let's not even do 10 years. Let's do 20 years in this organization. Tom Pody, before my time, did it with him. Justin Schultz, can't play, too soft, will never win. Stanley Cup teams don't have Justin Schultz on their blue line. You trade him to Pittsburgh for Magic Beans. He goes and gets 2 rings. He's still in the NHL right now. Did the same thing with Jeff Petrie. He's soft. He'll never be able to defend at the NHL level. Can't think quick enough. Blah, 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 blah. ends up being one of the better defensemen in the NHL, a legit top 2, top pairing kind of guy for what now? Almost a decade, I think. And you gave him away for more magic beans. So everyone here is sitting going, oh, you move Bouchard. He's part of the problem on the blue line, blah, 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 blah. He's 22. If you want good homegrown defensemen, you need to live through the growing pains that come along with that. And last year, I think he had a really good year with Duncan Keith. This year, he's maybe taken a step back in the first month and a bit of the season. But one of the lines that Low Tide love to use is that development is never a straight line. It doesn't always just go like this. And you go from first-round draft pick to third-pairing D-man to second-pairing D-man to superstar. Boom, done. It never works like that. And this is Bouchard. Last year he went like that. Maybe now he's just going like that a little bit. But that doesn't mean he's not going to go like this and bounce right back up. That can happen. I think it will happen. And anyone who's saying, and I like McKay, Bouchard should not be moved. I don't know who's saying that. A lot of people are saying that. And a lot of people are mad about the whole block shot thing. So I went and I dug into the numbers. Bouchard this season, amongst defensemen who have played at least 200 5-on-5 minutes, and there's 145 of them, okay? So you can do the math, divide that by 30. I'm not confident enough in my abilities to do that on the fly, but that is a good chunk of the everyday defensemen in the NHL. Evan Bouchard's shots for per 60, 8th out of those 145 defensemen. His Corsi for per 60, 7th. Now, there's Corsi, and then there's Fenwick. And I know a bunch of you are going to roll your eyes and be like, shut up, no one cares about analytics. Yep, fine. But the reason I'm bringing up these two specific numbers, Corsi is all the shot attempts. Fenwick is all the shot attempts, but it doesn't count blocked shots. So what you can do in this is take his Corsi minus his Fenwick, and what you get is how many block shots there are per 60. The gap for Evan Bouchard is 6.34. So for every 60 minutes he's on the ice at 5-on-5, he gets 7.47 shots on net, 6.34 blocked shots. Instances where players get in front of him. And with no context, you could be like, hey, that's not good. So I went and I compared it to the other players in the NHL who shoot the puck a lot. Brent Burns, best defenseman in the NHL at getting shots through. You know how many block shots he has per 60? 6.67. I'm doing a lot of math on the fly here, but that number is higher than Evan Bouchard's. Brent Burns, best defenseman at getting shots through, has more shots blocked per 60 than Evan Bouchard. Dougie Hamilton would be the next guy on that list. His number, 6.10, right there with Evan Bouchard. Jacob Trouba is actually very good at it. I will give him that. His number is more like 4.5. Rasmus Dahlin having a great season. His number is very good as well. But there are a lot of guys. Erik Karlsson's number, worse than Evan Bouchard's. Roman Jossi's number is almost 8. It's like 7.8. Evan Bouchard, yes. Is he having some shots that are getting blocked in the last couple games? Sure. But to blanket say this guy can't get pucks through is false. He's one of the best defensemen in the entire NHL at getting pucks through. Does he have a lot that are blocked? Sure. But similar to the blanket stat of giveaways for forwards, when you go look at who gives away the puck the most amongst forwards in the NHL, it's usually a lot of really good players because they have the puck on their stick a lot. So if you're Evan Bouchard and you're attempting more shots than anyone on the Oilers blue line, and he is, if you compare his individual Corsi for per 60 to every other Oilers D-man, he's at 15.62. That's 3.3 attempts more than Darnell Nurse on a per 60 basis. LA, as QF Pro says, had 30 block shots in that game. They did a great job of getting in the lanes. But the blanket statement of Bouchard can't get pucks through is false. It's flat out false. Brent says the NHL is not a development league. If Bouchard is not ready, he needs to be sent back down. But he is ready. This is the stage we're at in Evan Bouchard's development. There's going to be rough patches because the guy is 22 years old. That'll happen. You need to live with it because in the long run, you're going to be better off for it. What they shouldn't do is what they did with Darnell Nurse, is sit there and look at an unfinished product and then go, bridge deal. Oh, shit, we need to buy 8 UFA years and it costs us a ton of money. Then everyone complains that he's overpaid. Lock this guy up now. Start talking contract extension with Evan Bouchard yesterday and say, hey, yeah, you're fighting it a little bit right now, but we want to give you 7 years by $5 million and get a bargain like you did with Oscar Klefbom because that's the potential I see in Bouchard. He is more than capable of being Oscar Klefbom 2.0. The concerns with him, I mentioned those 145 defensemen who have played over 205 on 5 minutes. He's fourth in giveaways. He's got to be better with the puck in his own end. 100%. No one can argue that. That's a fact. The giveaways need to be curbed a little bit with Evan Bouchard. But again, look at what he's being asked to do. Handle legitimate, consistent top 4 minutes on a team that has Stanley Cup aspirations. He's got to go up against top flight NHLers on a nightly basis. And that's a tough thing to ask a young defenseman to do. Liam, I want to get your take on this because I've basically just been rambling and spewing numbers now for like 10 minutes on this topic. But like the giveaways, yes, it's a concern. There's a lot of players on this Oilers team who aren't playing well right now. And you could say Evan Bouchard's having his struggles. I get it. But there's a ton of potential with this guy. And I feel like sometimes people just get a little bit too in the moment focused. And then they latch on to certain things like the block shots.
Yeah, I like what you said about the trajectory of a prospect. Like, it's not just going to be a straight line, if that was the thing that Lotai said, right? Like, you gotta take what you get with him. I think everyone knows defensively he's not amazing, but I think he's got a lot better this season too in some aspects. One thing I would actually like to see Bouchard get better at is playing with maybe like a little bit more urgency in some parts of his game. I think that would actually help him a lot at both ends of the ice. Sometimes he's a bit too relaxed, but I'm not too worried about the shots because he's actually like trying to create something, and those numbers you said there like back it up greatly. Like to send him down just it simply doesn't make any sense at all. Like he would absolutely light up the AHL. He is an NHL defenseman, arguably the best offensive defenseman on this team. So you'd miss a big element there. I think he's just hitting a bump in the road, and this team as a whole is right now defensively. The Oilers are not a great hockey team. Once they turn that around and figure it out, which they will this season, Bouchard's numbers will also get better.
Yeah, I felt like that was maybe I'm being a little too negative right now. So I want to get positive here, and I want to give some love to a defenseman. I mean, we talked about the Oilers not, you said, Oilers not great defensively. Yeah, their blue line is struggling. That is correct, 100%. Cody Ceci has some tremendous numbers. So again, we're going giveaways per 60 here. Bouchard, 3.85. Nurse 3.23. Both those numbers need to come down. If you're a high event hockey player, you can be in sort of the mid to high 2s, I think. But as soon as you're in the 3s, that's not good enough. Brett Kulak down at 1.2 for a defensive defenseman, not a great puck mover. I'm okay with that. Tyson Barrie being at a 1 is great. Cody Ceci's all the way down at 0.43. So again, per 60 minutes. So if Cody Ceci averages 25 on 5 minutes a hockey game, that means he is only committing one giveaway every 6-ish games, right? 246, 0.43, double it. So for every basically 6 games of Cody Ceci, he's giving away 0.86 pucks. Not even a full giveaway. That's crazy. Cody Ceci is one of the signings. That might be my most incorrect take ever because I was pissed when they signed the guy. I think a lot of people who watched him in other markets, Alex would have had a front row seat to a young Cody Ceci in Ottawa. He's smiling and shaking his head. Disaster. In Toronto, he was terrible. Pittsburgh, he got better. The Oilers give him 4 years, and it's like, what the hell are you doing? We need good defensive defensemen, not just high-event chaos. And then Cody Ceci comes here, and he's magically like this consistent, remarkable defenseman.
Doesn't that just back up your Bouchard point even more? Defenseman isn't good to start his career. Finally figures it out, becomes this great defenseman in the NHL, like Cody Ceci has become. Maybe not great, very, very good defenseman. Just let Evan Bouchard play it out. It is, I agree. This team right now is frustrating on nights to watch them because you can just see the potential there, and then stuff happens. How are we losing this game again at home? But I think everything's going to be okay with Bouchard and the Oilers as a whole. So let's chill out a little bit. Let's just blame Edler for everything at the moment, and then we'll be fine.
Russell asks, when is Yamamoto coming back? He's expected to make the road trip. Jackson said that in the chat as well, actually. Yeah, expected to make the road trip, not expected to play Saturday. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if at some point next week, Holloway is down. Devin Shore might be down too. He had a brutal giveaway, then crashed into Skinner yesterday, and he's been making, I know he's your boy, Liam, so I'm sorry. He's been making some rough plays. Like, I think if you had to pick, let's say Benson and Yamo are healthy for the trip, and I think they both should be. Holloway probably goes down. I think we'd agree on that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he'd be number
So that
one.
means one of Kostin, Janmark, or Shore needs to go down as well. Who would you send down?
Sure. I think it's quite an easy play. So I caught part of this game last night on the radio when I was driving around. And the names that kept coming up outside of the top line of McDavid, Draisaitl, and Hyman were Janmark and Kostin. It felt like
consistently
every time it was those two guys outside of the big guns who were like contributing to this team. So if they're earning spots on this team right now, and Devon Shore is not, and I think that's fine. Like, this is what Devon Shore is. He's the guy who needs to be sent back and forth. He's kind of the sacrificial goat or whatever you want to call him. Like, he's the guy.
He's a tweener, right? Like, he can come up and give you decent minutes, but like you're not clutching your pearls if you got to put Devon Shore on waivers. Looking right now, the Oilers have 22 players on their roster. Is that including Yamo? I see, and that's including Yamo. So actually, you don't have to send anyone down. I think you have the cap space to make this thing work. You would activate Benson. That's another $750K. Yeah, actually, you don't need to send anyone down. You could just swap Holloway and Benson if you wanted to. And then you would have an extra forward. Oh, my God, the Oilers they'd have to healthy scratch a forward for a game. So you could keep everyone.
I think the debate is going to be in a couple of months when Kane actually comes back.
How do you keep Janmark in the lineup?
How do you keep Janmark? How do you keep Kostin in the lineup? Like, what if at this point, hypothetically, the real Klim Shady is on the first line with McDavid because he skates well. He brings that physical element. He looks like he can score a goal or two or contribute at least. Isn't that what they want from Puljujarvi? Like, what if Klim Kostin? I'm gonna say it. What if Klim Kostin is the answer?
Folks, we have our first answer of the year. Is Klim Kostin the answer? You got to ask the question. Think of the T-shirts. People. Let's make Klim the answer.
I
wish I had like my little roadcast. I would have hit the air horn, like the pew, 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 pew. Could Klim Kostin be the answer? He could be.
Could be.
All right, let's get into our daily bets for today, brought to you by our friends at Betway 19+. Please play responsibly. Liam, what do you got lined up here? Because I'm sure, like everyone in the chat, or like us, people in the chat lost some coin last night on the old Oily boys.
Yep, I did not hit either of my bets last night on the old Oily boys. So tonight, I'm trying to go with a couple of safer picks. David Pastrnak over 4.5 shots, minus 143. Seems high, but he's hit this in 2 of 3. He hits this very often. And he played Philly tonight. I think Boston could do very, very well. Obviously, they're one of the best teams in the NHL. Flipping to one of the other best teams in the NHL, the New Jersey Devils, who people were really doubting when they came into Edmonton. Now look at them. They're in Toronto. Jack Hughes is hitting his shot up very consistently too. Over 3.5, minus 125. So hoping these two a couple of safer picks tonight.
I like that Hughes one. I always get nervous betting on a guy at over 4.5 just because, like, no matter who you are, you have to have a good game to rip off 5 shots on net. But Pastrnak, like you said, he does it. So I like the Hughes bet, though. You know who my favorite shot prop is tonight?
The Carolina Hurricanes playing?
Yes.
Is it Necas? Necas or Burns?
Marty Necas shot prop. Let's ride. I love a good chance to bet the Marty Necas shot prop. We are absolutely hitting that tonight. I'm also taking the Lightning to beat the Flames, the Rangers to beat the Kraken, and the Breadman, Artemi Panarin, to pick up an assist. So those are our plays for today. We'll chat about that all tomorrow. No game day tomorrow, but Bag Milk's going to stop by as well.
I got a quick thing, Ty. Our producer, Alex, texted us actually and said, would Klim Kostin have stepped up for Connor? I think he would have. He has an NHL fight on his plate already. Lot to consider there. I can't remember, but if you Google Klim Kostin, there's a picture of him punching somebody in the face. So it definitely happened once upon a time in St. Louis. But he has.
I thought like maybe you had his hockey fights card up and you were like, yeah, you just saw a picture of him punching a guy once?
Well, when you make graphics, you have to Google these names, and I Googled Klim Kostin once, and there was a picture of him fighting. I'll see if I can pull it up at some point.
It's
so
he
definitely has
2 career fights. in the
You
NHL.
see that?
Oh, sorry. 1 preseason tilt, 1 regular season tilt. Yes, there he is. And he's punching
There
an
he is.
Islander. You know who that Islander is?
Scott Mayfield.
Correct. It is Scott Mayfield. That is his
Nice.
1 NHL fight. Good work. QF Pro, Costin
Edmonton Oilers.
Nugent-McDavid, line 1. Great picture. There you go, everybody. Everybody can see the proof that Klim Kostin once fought Scott Mayfield. McKay says, Klim is him. I'm him. I like that. Klim is him. Put it on a shirt. Jackson says, just start calling him Kostin. That almost, I love that. That actually might be just as good as Klim Shady.
Yeah. There's a lot of
right.
potential there with Klim on and off the ice.
Okay, we're gonna wrap this thing up here. Shout out to our friends at the Sports Closet. Team Canada World Cup gear. They are going to have some gear right away with the Oilers reverse retro logo. So if you're doing your Christmas shopping and you got an Oilers fan, I saw yesterday there was a cool vintage sweater at the game. I'm hoping Sports Closet gets that one in because that looked really sharp. Yeah, Canada World Cup gear, reverse retro Oilers gear, all of that stuff available. Sportscloset.ca. Can't get out to the Sherwood Park Mall, St. Albert Mall, or Kingsway Mall. Head online, sportscloset.ca. They do ship to you. They also give out gift cards. So if you have someone that's maybe a little bit pickier that you got to buy for, you just go get them a Sports Closet gift card. Tomorrow is not a Short for Giant game day, like I said. That next one won't come until Saturday, but we'll be live for that as well. Tomorrow, it is Bag Milk, and it is you in the YouTube chat as well. Look forward to that. Enjoy your Thursday. Maybe get your Christmas lights up today. I think that's what I'm going to do. Regardless, shout out to Frank Seravalli. Shout out to Alex Edler as well. We'll chat again tomorrow, Oilers fans.